Welcome to this deep dive. We're taking those really interesting materials you sent over and jumping into a topic that always gets people talking.
Yeah, definitely. It's the connection between paranormal phenomena and, well, spirituality.
Exactly. We've got a couple of key sources guiding us today.
Right. There's an excerpt from Galaxy.ai looking at how religion, spirituality, and the paranormal kind of interact,
hmm
and also a pretty detailed article from World Trends called Paranormal Phenomena and Spirituality, Unveiling the Mysteries Beyond the Known.
So our mission here really is to try and understand how spiritual beliefs often give us a way, a framework maybe, to interpret experiences that, well, that science doesn't quite have a handle on yet.
Right, things that fall outside the usual explanations.
Yeah, we're looking at how spirituality helps make sense of everything from, seeing a ghost to maybe spotting something weird in the sky.
And how these views might offer different takes on consciousness, existence itself, and maybe realms we don't normally perceive.
It's just fascinating, isn't it? The unexplained really pulls us in, that desire to find deeper meaning. Okay, let's get into it.
Agreed. So maybe first let's just clarify what we mean by paranormal.
Good idea.
Generally, it's phenomena that, mainstream science can't currently explain. Things like ghosts, UAPs, unidentified aerial
Right,
phenomena.
right. Used to be UFOs, now more UAPs.
Exactly. And cryptids, like Bigfoot, and also ESP, extrasensory perception.
Okay, so the stuff that makes you go, hmm. So where does spirituality come into play with all this?
Well, from a spiritual perspective, these kinds of things are often seen as, well, manifestations from somewhere beyond just the physical world.
Okay.
The World Trends article points out a few common interpretations. One is this idea of messages from beyond,
Messages, like what?
like maybe guidance or reassurance, perhaps even warnings from spirits or other non-physical beings.
Yeah,
It's just there's still interaction happening between different levels of reality.
almost like tuning into a different radio station.
That's one way to think about it, yeah. Another idea in the World Trends piece is dimensional intersections.
Dimensional intersections. Sounds intriguing.
The thought there is that maybe paranormal stuff happens when different layers or planes of reality kind of overlap or touch for a moment.
Ah, okay, so
Yeah,
you perceive something that's not usually there.
exactly. And then there's the concept of energetic residues.
Energetic residues.
Yeah, the idea that really intense events or strong emotions from the past can leave behind a kind of energetic imprint.
Like an echo.
Sort of, yeah. An echo that can sometimes be sensed or experienced later as paranormal activity. This ties into beliefs about subtle energies in some spiritual paths.
So instead of just saying, we don't know, and
Hmm.
stopping, spirituality offers these potential frameworks for trying to understand it all within a maybe bigger picture of reality.
Precisely.
Okay, let's dive into some specifics now. Ghosts and spirits.
I-
That's often the first thing people think of, right?
Yeah.
How does spirituality view them?
Right. Well, spirituality often connects ghost experiences directly to beliefs about life after death, the continuation of consciousness.
Makes sense.
The World Trends article mentions several spiritual reasons why a spirit might, stick around. One is unresolved issues.
Like unfinished business.
Exactly. Or strong emotional ties. Then there are emotional imprints, where, like we just discussed, powerful feelings or events leave a trace.
Okay.
And there's also the idea of spiritual guidance, where some spirits might intentionally interact to help or teach the living.
Hmm.
This lines up with what we see noted from L.M. Brown's book on ghosts from a spiritual perspective, and that Spiritual Horizons article by K.L. Green, too. Similar themes seem to pop up.
Interesting. Okay, what about something that really stretches our reality? UAPs, possible extraterrestrial encounters. How does spirituality approach that?
Yeah, that's where it gets really profound, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because the implications are just huge for how we see ourselves, the universe.
Totally changes the game.
Exactly. Encountering what seems like non-human intelligence, it forces you to question basic assumptions. The World Trends article mentions this idea of a cosmic connection,
Cosmic connection.
meaning, suggesting we're part of a much larger cosmic community, maybe interacting with beings who are perhaps more spiritually advanced.
Wow.
It also talks about the potential for spiritual awakening, that contact could trigger big shifts in human consciousness, our understanding of our spiritual place in it all.
So not just about technology, but about meaning.
Definitely. M.R. Lee's article on the Cosmic Awareness blog apparently explores this link between UAP encounters and spiritual growth. It really makes you think these are deep philosophical questions, too.
Okay, moving to another mystery. Cryptids. Bigfoot, Nessie, that kind of thing. Spiritual take.
These are interesting because they really live in that space between folklore and, well, maybe reality.
Yeah.
The World Trends article suggests they often have a strong symbolic meaning in spiritual traditions and myths. They might be seen as symbolic archetypes.
Representing parts of ourselves.
Yeah.
Or ancient figures.
Yeah, exactly. Or embodying something from older spiritual beliefs. There's also this idea of a connection to ancient wisdom, suggesting cryptids might link us to forgotten knowledge or maybe act as guardians of wild places.
Like living symbols from the past.
Okay. Yeah.
And ESP, telepathy, knowing something's going to happen. How does spirituality explain that?
Well, within many spiritual views, ESP is often seen as proof of our potential for expanded consciousness.
Going beyond the five senses.
Right. The World Trends article mentions the interconnectedness of all beings, maybe through some kind of universal consciousness. ESP could be a glimpse into that unity. And developing ESP is often linked directly to spiritual growth. It's seen as expanding our awareness. This seems to fit with that meta-analysis mentioned by White and Black in Parapsychology Journal, looking at ESP and spiritual connections.
And the Center for Psychic Research website probably has resources on this too.
Likely, yeah. Exploring that link between ESP and spiritual awareness.
So, okay, if someone has one of these weird experiences, or they're just curious, how could they, integrate these ideas into their own spiritual path or practice?
That's a great question. The World Trends article actually offers some practical approaches. Personal reflection is key.
Just thinking it through.
Yeah, really sitting with it. What might it mean for your spiritual journey? How does it make you feel? Dealing with the emotional side too.
Okay.
Then there's meditation and visualization. These are suggested as tools to maybe connect with any energies or beings involved, or to understand messages better, sort of like tuning that radio dial you mentioned.
Right, quieting the static to hear clearer.
Exactly. The article also mentions using rituals and protection.
For what purpose?
Things like clearing negative energy, setting boundaries, feeling spiritually secure, especially if an experience felt unsettling.
Got it.
And finally, seeking guidance.
Yeah.
Talking to people like mediums, shamans, spiritual counselors. Getting different perspectives can be really helpful.
That makes sense. Now, you mentioned the World Trends article had a footnote about actually developing ESP. That sounds like something people might want to explore more. What did it suggest?
Yeah, it let out several key areas. Cultivating meditation was number one.
The foundation.
Pretty much. Calming the mind, becoming more receptive, then developing intuition, learning to listen to your gut feelings, maybe journaling insights.
Trusting that inner voice.
Right. It also mentions specific psychic exercises, like actually practicing telepathy or trying to sense future events, remote viewing, stuff like that.
Oh, okay. Active practice.
Yeah. And working with divination tools like tarot cards, runes, pendulums was another suggestion.
Tools to focus intention.
Perhaps, or to access intuition in a structured way. Also, enhancing sensory awareness, really paying attention to your senses, your environment, developing empathy. Spending time in nature was mentioned too.
Getting more grounded and present.
Exactly. And maintaining a balanced lifestyle. Healthy diet, exercise, enough sleep. Basic well-being supports everything else.
Makes sense. Anything else?
2 more points. Seeking guidance and support from, say, spiritual groups or mentors, workshops. And finally, being patient. Practicing patience and persistence. This isn't usually an overnight thing.
Right. It sounds like a journey, not a quick fix. It's a really holistic approach.
It does seem well-rounded, yeah. Inner work, outer practices, lifestyle.
We've covered a lot on how spirituality interprets these phenomena. Is this just personal belief territory, or is there academic interest too? Research being done?
Oh yeah, it's definitely being looked at academically too. Our notes mention that article by Doe in the Journal of Spiritual Studies reviewing this very intersection.
Okay.
And J. Smith's book, Exploring the Paranormal, Spiritual Interpretations of the Unknown, probably goes into depth from a scholarly angle.
Right.
Plus, the Paranormal Research Society website apparently discusses the spiritual dimensions. And that edited volume, The Spiritual Aspects of Paranormal Phenomena, suggests a collection of academic work.
So it's good to know it's not just, fringe talk. There's serious thought and research happening.
Seems so, yeah. People are trying to understand this complex overlap from different angles.
Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the main takeaway for someone listening?
I think the core idea is that spirituality offers this really rich, diverse set of ways to understand things that science, it hasn't fully explained yet.
It provides meaning where science might just say anomaly.
Exactly. It offers context for experiences that might otherwise feel confusing, maybe even scary, if you only have a purely materialistic view.
And these spiritual views, they don't just explain, they can also give a sense of personal connection, right, to something bigger.
Absolutely. That's a huge part of it. When you look at these experiences through a spiritual lens, they can potentially offer really profound personal insights. They
Hmm.
can connect you to these bigger ideas about existence, about consciousness, encouraging you to think beyond just everyday reality and maybe the limits of our current scientific models.
So a final thought for you as you reflect on all this. Thinking about these different spiritual perspectives on the paranormal, are there any experiences you've had or things you've observed that you might look at differently now, through a new lens, maybe a more meaningful one?
And what other questions does this whole exploration raise for you? Questions about reality, our place in it. It's really an invitation to keep exploring these fascinating intersections for yourself.
Great point. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.